Hi everyone, and welcome to Soul Space, a new platform for ambient and new age musicians. Today, we've got on one of the most prolific new age artists, one of the pioneers, innovators from the very beginning. His name is Iasos, and he's a legend, and he's done a lot for the whole scene, and he doesn't even consider his own music new age, so we'll go into that in a little while. But he's seriously a hero of mine, and I think everyone can learn something from his process of how he makes music, and I just really hope you enjoy it. So let me know what you think. But here we go. Iasos, episode 1.
Hi there. I think we're working now, right?
Okay, this is good. Now we're all set.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, I was gonna kick it off by just asking about a bit about you as a person. And I was just like I basically in the intro I just explained who you are in the public eye, and about how you pioneered the new age genre. And also so they say, would you agree with that actually? I was going to ask.
Well, most people consider me one of the two founders of New Age music, the other one being Stephen Halpern, my buddy. We both released our first album in 1975, and that kicked off New Age music. However, to give credit where credit's due, we were preceded by Paul Horn with his album Inside the Taj Mahal, and we were preceded before then with Tony Scott, Music for Zen Meditation. To me, that's New
I
Age
see.
music. They're not considered the founders, but they preceded us, so they need to be credited. Just we give credit where credit's due. But personally, I don't think of my music as New Age music. I think of it as celestial music, celestial, heavenly, interdimensional music. And I think of myself as a music creator specializing in celestial, heavenly, interdimensional music.
Got you. So you feel like the label was impressed onto you more than anything?
Well, it was the beginning of New Age music, so it's a reasonable label, but what New Age music means now to most people is quite different than what I do. When New Age music first began, it had a spiritual meaning. It was music for meditating, music for yoga, music for tuning into your own higher self, music for relaxation. And now it kept evolving and spreading out in its definition. Now it just means miscellaneous. If you go to a record store, New Age means if it doesn't fit any of the other categories, just throw it into the New Age bin. So now New Age music just means miscellaneous. It doesn't have the original meaning.
Well, would you say it tends to be drumless New Age music when you find it in a record store?
About 85% of it, yeah, but there's also world beat music.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's within the New Age category.
Yeah, I see. I was going to ask, with you mentioned Stephen Halpern before.
Yes.
I was wondering, are you still in touch with him? And also, are you still in touch with any of your contemporaries from like the beginning of your career?
Well, we see each other once in a while when I'm in his area, but I haven't been in his area for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Well, we're friends, we're buddies.
Cool. That's brilliant. Well, I was going to ask, generally as well. Are there any new age or ambient or musicians of the same sort of style as you that you still work with today, that you collaborate with at all?
I really don't collaborate at all. I'm very much a loner. There are a few extreme exceptions. For example, on my Realms of Light album, one of the songs, the Diamond Heart Center of Creation, on that song, my higher self, well, not my higher self, being I work with Vista, he told me to work with 3 other musicians, Steve Kindler on violin. For me, Steve is like God playing violin, and 2 female singers. One was Sophia, and the other was Joey Fabier. And so I used those 3 other musicians on my song, on my album. But in general, I'm a loner. I just do it all myself. I don't really collaborate much.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's like this. In the old days, before multi-track recording, you needed to have multiple musicians to have music that had more than one instrument. But nowadays, with multi-track recording, one guy can do it all, really, unless he doesn't have sufficient technique in the other instruments. So it's equivalent to one painter. If he can paint a painting all by himself, why does he need another painter to paint the clouds, and another painter to paint the trees, and he paints the landscape? If he can do it all himself, it's no longer as essential as it used to be, thanks to multi-track recording. But incidentally, in the beginning of my career, I had a lot of failure because I was working with other musicians, and their influence always, no exception, always tended to make the music much more normal, earthly, conventional. And then a friend of mine told me, why don't you do it yourself using multi-track tape recorder to avoid that? And as soon as I did that, bam, my career took off.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Could you sort of go a little bit more in detail about those sort of initial recording days where you started recording on your own for the first time?
Oh, well, what do you want to know? The technology I was using?
Just like whereabouts were you? Where was it a studio you were working in? What was
I was living in Sausalito. I was living in a room in the Sausalito Art Center. It's a kind of a small room. And I did all my recording in there. Initially, I had a stereo tape recorder. Then later, I had a 4-track tape recorder, which allowed me to bounce tracks. I'd fill all 4 tracks and mix it into stereo onto my stereo tape recorder. Then I transferred back to 2 tracks of the 4-track tape recorder. And I'd repeat that process again, having another 2 tracks. So I had the end result being 8 tracks mixed down into stereo.
Mhm.
But it'd be 3rd generation by the time it reached the master, 3rd generation on tape.
Got you. And what was the sort of when you first made that music? What sort of place in your life were you in? Were you a fully fledged musician at that point?
Yes.
Yeah, got you. And when you sort of made that breakthrough, that you could make this music on your own, and it was sort of, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like the purest music that you'd made at that point in terms of like your own sort of vision or Vista's vision.
There's a higher dimension being that I worked with. At a certain point in my life, I had a flash memory where I remembered him, and it released a flood of love for me to him. And I realized that he and I had made an agreement to work together before I was born. We made the agreement. And the agreement was once I was born, I'd become competent with music. He'd transmit music ideas and I'd manifest it and get it out there publicly. And the whole point of the whole collaboration was to create music that would facilitate people raising their vibrations so they could stay with our planet, as our planet is also raising in vibrations right now. So I was doing my best to manifest the music I was hearing in my mind. And of course, with cruder technology, you have a cruder externalization of that. But as the technology gradually improved, I got finer, more precise translation, less distortion, more accurate translation of what I was hearing in my mind to what was actual air sound waves that anybody could hear.
It's incredible. I really hear in your music like such a divine presence, I'd say. I'd say.
Yeah, that's Vista. That's the being I work with, Vista. He's a very high being. He's so much more evolved than I am that I feel very honored to be working with him. But to give you an idea of the difference in evolution, it's like the difference between a worm and a human. That's the kind of difference between me and Vista. But despite that huge difference in spiritual evolution, we love each other. And I love him the way a younger brother would totally adore an older brother. That kind of love. And he's a magnificent being. As a matter of fact, many of his qualities have rubbed off on me just because we're working together. For example, one of his specialties is concentration. And I've developed such a highly developed sense of concentration that I've had psychics tell me that when they're trying to get something through to me, it's like a brick wall, because when I concentrate, I'm so concentrated that nothing can get through. So they complain that when I'm concentrating, nothing can get through from them to me.
Do you believe in psychics?
Yeah, I mean, I believe in telepathy, sure. Many civilizations, everyone's telepathic and it's normal. For us, it's the exception rather than the rule, but it's natural, it's normal, and everyone does it. Now, a lot of people who claim to be psychics are not really psychics, but a few of them are.
Have any psychics read your mind or anything before? Like if you paid them, or have you paid them?
Once when I was in Reno, there's the Reno Psychic Institute, and they're teaching students to become psychic. And they said, Iasos, we'd love to use you as a subject because you're such an interesting character with such an interesting energy field that we'd love to have our students focus on you. So we did that. And the funny thing was, one of the students got this old man who was complaining about my life, saying I should get a job. And I knew they were picking up on my father.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of funny.
So that's something your dad would always say.
Yeah. He thought I was wasting my life. I could have been a great surgeon, a great lawyer, a great something, but I wasted my life in his mind.
So it leads on to
he means well. He meant well. I love him for his loving intention,
Mhm.
but he didn't really get me at all.
Yeah. Did any of your family like really understand your music, would you say?
No,
No. Have you got a family in Hawaii?
I have a lady that I live with.
Does she like fully sort of see your vision with these things?
She knows I'm doing beautiful music. She doesn't really get that it's from higher dimensions. She does get that it's different.
Hmm.
And to her, it's just very beautiful. She doesn't get it's higher dimensional music or celestial music, but she gets that it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's amazing in itself. That's amazing in itself. Brilliant. Okay. I mean, I was gonna ask you if you could sort of describe yourself, because I made an attempt at describing you in my intro. I was just wondering if you could describe
It's
yourself.
impossible. I'm totally indescribable. That's a joke. That's a joke. That's just a joke. You want me to describe you? I'm 74 years old. I was born in Greece. Lived most of my life in America. I'm a human. What else do you want to know?
Could you tell me a bit about like your upbringing in America, like as a child? Was it in San Francisco?
When I was 4 years old, we moved to New York City. My father was a doctor. We were there a few years until he got his doctor's degree in America. He already had it in Greece. He got it in America. And then we moved to a small town in upstate New York called Malone. And I was there from the middle of second grade till the end of high school. Malone is far north, 11 miles from the Canadian border, about south of Montreal. And then I went to school at Cornell University in the middle of New York State in Ithaca, New York. And at Cornell, I kept changing majors because I wasn't happy with any major I picked. And in my third year there, I realized that all my creativity is in music, so I should make that my career. But since I was in the middle of college, I'll go ahead and finish it. So I finished it with no intention of continuing in that field. And I was finishing up in anthropology, and I inadvertently, unintentionally won a postgraduate scholarship at the University of Oregon in anthropology with all tuition plus $2,000 a year. Then it was a lot of money, but I passed it all up, which made my father super angry and made the University of Oregon super angry. But I wanted music to be my career, so I came to California to work on my music, and I was living in California then.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. That's amazing. So, okay, so then you started working on music, and then is that when you met sort of like your early, you were talking about the few people you collaborated with at the beginning?
I didn't collaborate in the beginning.
Oh,
I just worked with musicians, and it was very frustrating. It never worked. It wasn't creating what I wanted to manifest. So I stopped collaborating, and then my career took off.
Right, I see. My apologies. I know you work with Kevin Kendall and John Serry, right?
I have the highest regard for both of them. They're wonderful musicians. And by the way, Kevin Kendall told me that I inspired him to make a career out of creating music.
Wow.
Because he's inspired by what I was doing. And now I love his music as much as anybody's music. Incredible. I love both of those guys. They're both wonderful.
Yeah. I was going to ask sort of along the same line.
By the way, Kevin Kendall is in your territory. He's in United Kingdom.
Oh, really? Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is he in London, do you know? Or
I don't know what part of London, but you could look him up and find out. Kevin Kendall with a K.
For sure. Yeah, I'd love to interview him at some point. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I was going to ask as well, just on the upbringing side of things, like, were you raised with a specific religion at all?
I was raised with Judaism, but I never bought into it at all.
Yeah.
They gave me the Old Testament to read. They're trying to program me to be a good Jew. I was reading it and I said, this is full of violence. Couldn't possibly be wise because it's full of violence. So I didn't get into it at all. And ever since high school, I've been extremely curious and hungry to know, how does reality really work? Forget everything religion say, forget everything science says. How does it really, really, really work? And when your mind focuses on something, it becomes a magnet to draw in information on whatever you're focusing on. And since I was focusing on that, I was attracting information that was satisfying that curiosity. And now I've come to sources of information that go way beyond science or religion. It's back metaphysical information from benevolent ET races. And on my website, iasos.com, I have a section called Metaphysical Spiritual Information. And on that, I have a concentrated summaries of information from some of these sources, which is sort of like a summary of the concepts. And to me, it's light years ahead of anything science says, and it's light years ahead of anything religion says.
Mhm.
But it's love oriented because, no one has a monopoly on truth, and God is love.
Totally. So do you believe in like a highest God, like a central figure God?
Yeah, basically it's an artery system. You can have one artery and it branches out into multiple, and each of those branch out into multiple, each of those. So it fractalizes out like that. But when going upstream, it all goes back to one, which one universal divine being, whether you call him source or first cause or Allah or God or the white spirit or the infinite creative being, it doesn't matter what the name is. It's just one source for everything. And it's eternal. By the way, you're eternal. Everyone is eternal because time is an illusion. If you exist now, you have always existed and you always will exist. We're eternal beings. And all your past lives are happening right now. All your future lives are happening right now because time is an illusion. It's all right here, right now.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's a really hopeful.
That's by the way, that's why people sometimes get a past life reading. They could just as easily, just as accurately get a future life reading because they're really happening now, simultaneous.
Yeah, that's incredible. So I've had a look through your sources with the metaphysical information. Is that, say, if someone were to call that a religion, would you call it metaphysical information, or is there another title that you give it?
It's not a religion. Religions separate. All this information is designed to unite, not separate. Like my religion's right and your religion is wrong. My religion is the only true religion. It's none of that. And a lot of it is basically concepts that you don't need to believe on faith. You can test drive them in your daily life, just see if it works. I'll give you an example. The most profound, practical concept I've ever come across is the idea that when something happens in your life that would normally appear like a bummer, you give it a positive interpretation and you end up getting a positive outcome. Now, you don't need to believe that's true. You just need to test drive it and see if that's so. And the mechanics behind the scene of how it works and why it works is this. There are infinite versions of your reality, which way it could go, and you're choosing millions of times a second which way you want to steer it. And it's your beliefs that are the steering wheel that determines which way you can go in. Think of a multi-lane highway with, instead of 4 lanes, it might have 1 million lanes in it. And you can change lanes whenever you like. And it's a steering wheel that determines which lane you're in. Well, in your reality, the steering wheel is your beliefs. The beliefs determine which lane you're in. So when something happens that looks like a bummer, there are many possible outcomes, from the most horrible to the most average, mundane, and normal to the most wonderful and heavenly. And they're all real. They're all equally real. So you steer it with your belief. So when you say, I'm giving it a positive interpretation, that's a sneaky, indirect way of saying, I'm having a positive belief about that. And when you give it a positive belief, you're steering yourself into a version of reality that has a positive outcome. First few times I tried that, I was startled by how magically things rearrange themselves. I was really startled. Then I realized, well, gee, that's how reality works. Then I'm not as startled, but I always expect it.
That's amazing. So where was that sort of?
I just want to add one more thing to that.
Yeah, sure.
When you say give it a positive interpretation, that's different than hoping that it'll be positive. It's different than praying that it's be positive. It's a matter of deciding, which is much more powerful than hoping or praying. Deciding it's going to be positive and expecting that, because you're giving it a positive interpretation. So you're steering to that version of reality where it ends up being a positive outcome. Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No problem at all. I'm glad you added that. I was just going to ask, where was that source from in your life? Like, where did you hear about that initially?
From a being called Bashar, who has a channel on Earth, a human being in the California area called Daryl Anka. He's a channel for Bashar. Curiously enough, Daryl had a similar situation as me, which is at a certain point in his life, he woke up and remembered that he'd made an agreement with this being. They made the agreement before he was born. The agreement was that they'd work together later in his life. And it's similar to my experience with Vista, similar to Jack Purcell's channel for Lazarus, similar to his experience with Lazarus, where at a certain point in his life, he remembered he'd made agreement before being born to work with Lazarus. So all three of us had a similar type of experience on that. But Bashar is the being, and he's from the Isasani civilization, which is way more advanced than we are. As a matter of fact, that civilization is so advanced that even the Pleiadians, which are way more advanced than us, look up to the Isasani for spiritual wisdom.
I was going to ask, like, with these beings, are they something that you see, like when you're contacted? Do you see them, or do you hear them, or how do they communicate, or do you just know what they're saying?
None of that. Daryl Anka is a channel for Bashar. Daryl Anka speaks, and there are videos of him speaking as a telephone for Bashar. So you hear Bashar through the body of Daryl Anka talking.
So when Vista speaks through you, or does
he
Vista
doesn't speak? No, he doesn't speak. I get musical visions in my mind, and a person says, "What is that like?" And I can explain what that's like. Think of one of your favorite pieces of music right now, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, now run that piece of music in your mind. It's like that, only it's a piece of music that doesn't exist yet. That's the only difference. So I hear it in my mind the way you can hear in your mind a piece of music you already know and love.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear it like that. But it gives me more than just the music. It also gives me the specifics of the chords involved, and also how. A lot of it involves special effects, special techniques. I also get how to do it. And I also get how it's going to affect people when it's finally produced and it's released to the public. Because different pieces of music have different effects. One might have a softening effect in your heart. One might stimulate your third eye. One might make you feel strong and powerful. They have different effects, and Vista gives me a readout on the general average effects it's going to have on people, even before the music exists as sound. And his readout is always perfectly accurate, always, no exceptions.
That's amazing. I know I've watched talks by you before talking about like the chakra up here as well, like with a lot of high frequencies.
Yes.
I love that, and I love the piece of music that you play in that talk as well. I love that stuff, honestly. I definitely feel it when it's up here. Like
it's crystalline tones, high frequency crystalline tones that trigger that chakra.
Yeah, that's amazing. I also just while I'm on the topic, I love the bubble massage as well, because I feel like it's obviously a piece of music, but it's more of like it's like an experience. Well, I mean, a lot of your music is an experience, not all of it, but I feel like that it's almost not harmonic, is it? It's just like a feeling.
Well, see, water has a strong resonance with the emotional body, so the bubble massage has a strong effect of bubbling or washing away or purifying a person's emotional body, because water represents the emotions and has a strong resonance with emotions. Funny story how that was created.
Yeah, please tell me.
You know what happens if you put dry ice in water? It bubbles and creates this white smoke. Creates a bubble sound. And once I was doing that, I thought, this is an interesting sound. I should record this bubbling sound. So I planned something. I had a huge coffee pot, which is about, let's see, maybe I get farther away. It's about that tall and about round about like this. And I filled it up with hot water, because the hotter the water is, the more interaction you get with dry ice. And then I set it up in my bathroom, which was small. I put it on top of the toilet and had it going to where the water was boiling hot. And then I had two microphones aimed down at it, so when I dropped in the dry ice, they could record it. And I had the wires for the microphone going outside the bathroom. And just outside, I had my tape recorder to record those two microphones. And I got the tape recorder recording. I went in there and I dropped the dry ice, huge amount of it, into it. Instantly, I couldn't see a thing. There was just smoke everywhere. I was blinded. I couldn't see a thing. I tried getting out. I electrocuted myself. I finally managed to get out the door, close the door. And there's all this smoke coming out of the bottom of the door, just coming out. And I look at my tape recorder. All the needles were peaked at the maximum. I needed to decrease the volume level so they wouldn't be distorting. And then I did that, and I got a great recording of bubbles. And then by playing it back at different speeds, I got different kinds of bubble harmonics, and I mixed it all together to create the bubble massage.
Wow.
A harrowing experience with a beneficial result.
That's incredible.
I have so many funny stories like that I could tell you. Once I was recording a piece of music, and there's a certain place where cascading sound comes down, leading to a cymbal crash, and it happens a second time, cascading sounds coming down to a cymbal crash. But the third time it cascaded down, instead of a cymbal crash, I wanted it to be a water splash.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was staying at the house of a friend of mine in San Rafael. And to record the water splash, she had a swimming pool. I got a big rock about this big, say about this big. And I
Yeah.
put a rope around it. And I got the microphones over the pool. And I just threw that rock into the pool to record it. She saw it from a window. She saw me doing, what are you doing? She thought it was really wacko. So a lot of weird things I do, but I get the results.
What song was that for? Did you say?
It's a prehistoric song that preceded any of my albums that are out.
Got you. Got it.
It's called Rapaloma. It's not publicly released.
I was gonna ask on that sort of topic, is there any music that isn't released that you love and listen to yourself? Or actually, as well as that, like, do you listen to any of your own music at all?
So I listen to my music or other people's music? What are you asking?
Do you listen to any of your own music?
Not regularly. Basically, I don't listen to music much because it interferes with hearing music inside my head.
Mm-hmm.
If I hear music out here, it blocks me from hearing stuff in here. If there's silence out here, I can more easily hear stuff in there. Sometimes I listen to other music once in a while, not often. Once in a while, I might play a piece of music of mine that I recorded quite a while ago. If I recorded recently, then it's too fresh in my mind. It's not a surprise. But if I hadn't recorded in a while, I listen to this, oh, that's nice. How clever you are.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it in a while. But I don't listen much to music except internally.
Got you. So like, is there any pieces in your discography that you're particularly proud of, or that what do you think the pieces that you've listened to most, like, of your discography?
They asked Duke Ellington, which is your favorite piece of music? He said, it's always the same one. So which one is that? The one I'm now working on.
Yes. Yeah.
That was his answer. I love quite a few different pieces of music for different reasons. Perhaps one of my favorite is the Diamond Heart Center of Creation. And on my DVD, Realms of Light, I also have visuals to go with that. And I think the visuals with the music for the Diamond Heart Center of Creation is probably my highest creative manifestation so far, both of them together. But I love many pieces for different reasons. I like, for example, Smooth Sailing Over Enchanted Lands, which is very ecstatic. I love The Angels of Comfort because it's very soothing on your heart. So I like different songs for different reasons.
Totally. I was gonna ask about Angels of Comfort in particular. Obviously, one of your most popular songs, I'd imagine.
Do you know the story of how that was created?
I'd love to hear it.
Early in my career, when electric keyboards were first coming out, I used to go to a music store and they had a keyboard there called the ARP String Ensemble. Each note sounded like a lot of violins playing that note. I went to the music store and I played it and it blew me away. I thought, this sounds like the Holy Spirit. All the other musicians there, like rock musicians, they cracked up laughing. They would say something like that because it's outside their reality. They're into rock music. But I really thought, this really sounds like the Holy Spirit. But I couldn't afford it, so I didn't have it. However, a few months later, I had a friend that was in a rock band and they had one of these instruments, and he arranged one day when I could actually record it. He said, come in on this day to our studio where band practice is, and when we take a break to go out for dinner, you can record with it. So I went in there with just two pieces of equipment, my Echoplex unit for echo tape delay and my tape recorder. So I plugged them into this keyboard. My plan was just to create a background sound that I could use in the background. I was playing zither in concert. So it's going to be on one scale, the same scale that zither was tuned to. But I would do it at different speeds. I'd record it at the fast speed on the tape recorder and then rewind it and then go to the slow speed, record it at the slow speed. That way, in playback, I could get real speed and double speed or half speed and real speed. Either way, my intention initially was to get real speed and double speed to be really high notes. So I managed to record it through twice, and then the band members came back and I had to pack up and take my equipment home. And then when I was home, I was experimenting with it. Oh, I forgot to mention one point. in between these two events, when I first experienced this keyboard and when the person told me that they had it and I could record there, in the middle time-wise, I had the thought, I've reached the point in my music career where I can manifest anything that I can imagine. If you can imagine it, you can manifest it. By the way, that's true in general, because if you're not capable of manifesting it, you would not be able to imagine it either. So being able to imagine something is proof that you can manifest it. That's a general universal principle. So I thought to myself, I can manifest anything I can imagine. And I thought, well, if that's true, what would I like to manifest? I thought about it. I said, you know, I'd like to create some music that has the energy of the Holy Spirit in it. And when I use that term, I do not mean it specifically in the Christian sense of the word. I mean it in the universal sense of the word, because the Holy Spirit, in my understanding, is a divine level of spirit that is very, very involved with every birth and every death that happens on earth, to make the transition into birth much more loving and comfortable, and to make the transitions of death much more loving and comfortable. So it's a very comforting feeling. So I put out a request mentally in my heart. It went something like this: oh, Holy Spirit, I really would love to create some music that has your energy in it. That was it. Oh, Holy Spirit, I really would love to create some music that has your energy in it. Okay. Then a few weeks later, or maybe a month and a half later, my friend who's in this rock band said, we got one of these keyboards you can record with. I said, yeah, great. My intention then was just to create a background drone on this particular scale that I could use when I'm playing zither in concert. I could have that behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got home and I started exploring and experimenting what was recorded, I thought, geez, that's strange. This sounds like a composed piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
Then I realized it sounds better at half speed and real speed instead of real speed and double speed, because at half speed, the violins sound like cellos.
Yeah.
It was like cellos and violins. Then I experimented, because at a certain point, I thought, oh my God, this is the answer to my request to have music of the Holy Spirit. Oh my God, this is a great piece of music. And it sounded composed, but when I did it, I wasn't composing anything. They just snuck it through me somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And then I recorded it when I was doing the final mix down. It was like an Olympic slalom skier, being very careful with every move he makes, because you make one wrong move and you're off, you got to try it over again. That was before automated mixing.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally did it. I did it. And I knew I had a masterpiece.
Yeah.
And I knew it was profound, and I knew it was a manifestation of the Holy Spirit. And that's how the Angels of Comfort came into being.
It's incredible. That's amazing. And how long did it sort of take to catch on with people? Like when did you start having people around you say, wow, this is really incredible?
As soon as they heard it, they sensed it right away. That particular piece has a lot of universal appeal. Many different kinds of people can get it, can resonate with it. No surprise universal appeal, because it's the Holy Spirit which is involved with every birth and every death.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's called the Angels of Comfort, because the Angels of Comfort work with the Holy Spirit to facilitate births and deaths, making them as comfortable as possible.
Amazing. What a tale. And so
I could tell you endless funny stories about all kinds of stuff. I could go on for about 6 hours telling you funny stories.
I'd love to know a bit more about, like the sort of studio settings that you were in the sort of like in the 70s in general, and were there like sort of engineers who were there with you working on these pieces?
No. I always work only by myself. See, if you have engineers, then the result becomes a blurred compromise of my idea what it should be and their idea what it should be. Whereas if it's just me, it gets to be a sharply focused manifestation of what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Democracy doesn't work with art. If you have three people working together, the end result is a blurred average of the vision this one has, the vision that one has, and the vision that one has. It's a blurred, compromised image. But if it's only one person, it can be a sharply focused manifestation of their vision. So I would never do that. I'm always 100% in control of what I'm manifesting.
Got you.
I have a friend who's a professional music teacher, and he's always trying to get me to use a professional masterers, to master my music. And we have this argument. It's a friendly, loving argument. I would never do that, because if they master my music, then it's going to be their version of how it should sound instead of my version of how it should sound. And I'm the one that has the inner version, so I'm going to go by my version of how it should sound, not anybody else's version of how it should sound, regardless of how extremely competent they are with the sound equipment.
Yeah. Have you sort of worked on through the years becoming like very like music tech oriented as well as creative in terms of like, learning sort of EQing and sort of mixing and that
Well,
sort of.
yeah. The more you understand the technology, the more flexibility you have. It's like a sculpture having different sculpturing tools to cut wood or cut marble, you know. The more
Mhm.
tools you have, the more flexible you become, and the more accurately you can manifest whatever the inner vision is.
Yeah. And then
So technology is very important to me, and I have notebooks remind me how every particular software works.
yeah. What DAW do you use, by the way? Do you work in digital nowadays?
Yes, What DA do I use?
Yeah.
M Audio,
Yeah. Nice.
Fast Track Ultra. It's I basically use it most of the time at I can use it at 96K, but I usually use it at 48K 24-bit. But
Mhm.
when I master my music, each piece of song, I master it in many different levels of format, the highest one of which is 96K 32-bit floating, and the
Mhm.
lowest one of which is the CD format of 44.1K 16-bit. And I have many versions in between that I use.
Do you
Because rendering it at each of those is different than starting at the highest resolution and then copying it to the lower resolution. That's not as, that's much more blurred. That's not as precise as rendering it in each of those versions.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you? I know. I've read in another interview that you're not a fan of distortion. Um, uh,
Who?
you're not a fan of distortion or like saturation and that sort of
Ah,
thing. Is that still the case now?
yeah. Uh, Distortion creates the emotion of passion. I love the emotion of passion, but I don't love distortion. The way you can get the passion without distortion is by filtering out the high frequencies, because if you look at a sound of distortion through an oscilloscope, instead of seeing a smooth curve, you see smooth, but then it gets flattened out because it gets clipped,
Hmm.
and then it comes down at the other end. So at the point where it gets flattened out and where it comes back down, there's a sharpness there. And that sharpness is like a saw blade. It cuts holes through your etheric body. It's extremely destructive sound, extremely destructive sound. But if you filter the high frequencies down, it's like rounding out those sharp corners.
Hmm.
That way you can get the passion without getting the distortion. Which reminds me of a funny story. I love the passion that Jimi Hendrix had in his music. And when I was really into flute a lot, I tried to reproduce it. No matter what I did, I couldn't get the passion effect that Jimi Hendrix is getting on his guitar. Eventually, I had the inside, of course not. You're playing flute. Flute is not a passionate sound. It's good for other things, but not for passion. Whereas guitar, especially fuzz guitar, is great for passion, you know. But I'll tell you, in heaven, there's no distortion in the music at all.
Well,
None whatsoever.
I was gonna ask, how do you picture heaven, if you were to describe that?
So there's not just one heaven. There are many different planes of consciousness. For each plane of consciousness, there's a whole other realm there. And how many planes are there? Well, it goes up to infinity.
Yeah.
God doesn't have any upper limit. It just keeps going up. It can get more heavenly, more heavenly, more heavenly. So there's not one, the heaven.
Yeah.
And it's a state of being, a state of vibration, a state of consciousness. And the higher up you go, the more wonderful it becomes, the more beautiful it becomes, the more harmonious it becomes, the more loving it becomes.
Hmm. Do you ever I know you channel sound a lot. Do you ever like channel visuals at all?
Yeah, that's what my DVD is, Realms of Light. As a matter of fact, the being I work with, Vista, they don't call him Vista for nothing. One of his specialties is the all-seeing eye of God, which really means a highly evolved third eye.
Hmm.
And another name for Vista is Cyclopea. And the Greek myth about the Cyclops, which had one eye, that's a human distortion version of Cyclopea, who had a highly evolved third eye.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
Cyclops become like a distorted version of that. They turned into an ugly monster with one eye. But it
Right.
came from Vista, whose previous name was Cyclopea, which is divine being, totally magnificent divine being. And he had, normal vision, but he also had this, which is spherical vision, where you see in all directions simultaneously, spherically.
I see.
And so the my first video, Crystal Vista, was a simple attempt at that because I had limited equipment then. I did in 1980. But then more recently, my Realms of Light DVD, I'm very proud of,
Yeah.
because it's a manifestation of Vista, both in sound and in visuals. But when I did that, I got to tell you, when I finished my Realms of Light album CD,
Mhm.
I thought to myself, this is very visual triggering music. This would make a great DVD. So I looked around for what visuals I could use, and nobody was doing the kind of visuals I wanted to see. So I
Yeah.
figured, well, I'll just do it myself. I'll learn video special effects, do it myself. Well, it took me 4 years to master video special effects, to the point where I felt, okay, now I'm ready to actually start creating the visuals to go with my music. Then it took me another 3.5 years to actually create the visuals to go with the music, where it's tightly synced with the music, like Fantasia. Walt Disney's Fantasia is tightly synced between the visuals and the music. It's like a tightly synced down to the video frame. As a matter of fact, sometimes video frame is 33 milliseconds, and the music is there first. So sometimes I wanted the frame to be right where the music peaks, but because the 33 milliseconds might be a little bit before, a little bit after, and I had to figure out where I wanted to be, because I couldn't put it there because the video was there or there, and I had to pick. So but I got it as precise as I could make it. And that is a visual manifestation of what I'm getting from Vista.
Yeah. I've watched Temple. Is it Temples of Olympus?
The Temples of Olympus at Dawn, a flute solo.
One. Yeah. That's incredible. That's an amazing one. What sort of visual software did you use to create that, or was it hardware?
A lot of it was After Effects,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of it was Premiere.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, After Effects is sort of like Photoshop, moving and changing through time. With Photoshop, you can have different layers. Likewise, with After Effects, you can have different layers, but each of those layers can be changing as it progresses through time.
Mm-hmm.
So After Effects is a Photoshop moving through time. And so I use it to stack different effects on top of each other. So you're seeing them, one might have holes, so you can see where the hole is, the layer below it.
Mm-hmm.
So you can cut out transparency sections so you can see what's below it in that. So you could see multiple layers simultaneously. And then now I would render that as just one video clip. And then I use Premiere to stitch it in time. So I'd have one video clip and stitch another one after it, and stitch another one after that, another one after that. So After Effects was vertical stacking, and Premiere was longitudinal stacking, one after the other. And then I also used combustion.
Mm-hmm.
And combustion was used for particle effects, like fireworks or sparkles or waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the three main things I used.
Is that,
And of course, in After Effects, there are innumerable plugins from other companies you could use within it. And each plugin will give you certain wild effects that After Effects couldn't do on its own.
Yeah, incredible piece of software. I've dabbled in it a little bit, but I've never got fully into it. But I know there's so much you can do, isn't there?
Well, so much you could do. Basically, most of the time that I was studying those 4 years, I was studying different plugins for After Effects.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I was going to ask, are there other arts mediums that you've explored? Like, have you painted before? Have you?
No. I had a great painter, John Mason,
Mm-hmm.
a friend of mine. He's really masterful, as masterful as you can get. He offered to teach me how to paint. And I knew that if he taught me, I'd pick it up real fast.
Mm-hmm.
I said, thank you, but I'll pass on that, because if I spread out in too many directions, I'll be good at nothing. When I was in college, I realized I can be great at anything I set my mind to, but the danger is you try to be great at too many things and you spread yourself too thin, you'll be master of none of them. So I try to limit myself. So though he taught me how to paint, and I knew he'd be a great teacher, and I'd really learn well, still, I've already branched out enough doing web design and doing music and doing visuals. That's branching out enough.
Mm-hmm. On the topic of, we were talking about Temples of Olympus at Dawn, the reference to Olympus. Do you feel like you reference like Greece quite a lot, like in your titles and in your whole sort of?
No, only for the flute solos. No, only for the flute solos, nothing else.
Okay.
The reason for that is many of the scales they're using are scales that were common in ancient Greece that are not common now, although some of those scales are used by certain classical composers. For example, Claude Debussy is fond of many of the same scales that I'm fond of. Now, I'm not doing it because I'm copying him. I'm doing it because he and I love the same scales.
You were talking about you sort of already said that you don't listen to a lot of other music. Is that right? Do you listen
Yes.
to any other music outside
Yes.
of the genre? Do you listen
Yes.
to other genres?
Yeah. I listen to all kinds of stuff, some new, some very old. For the old stuff, for example, I like certain classical composers like Ravel, Respighi, and Debussy. I like tropical cocktail music by Les Baxter and Martin Denny. When I was in high school, the first record albums I bought with my own money was Martin Denny music. And the unique thing about Martin Denny is the first time I heard music that was evolved rhythmically and evolved harmonically. Because most music, like classical music, most music is evolved one way or the other, but not both. For example, classical music is evolved harmonically, but nowhere rhythmically. And other stuff like Afro-Cuban music or African music or Tahitian music, it's very evolved rhythmically, but nowhere harmonically, no. But Martin Denny and Les Baxter, those guys had both down. They really had both down. I really love that.
Yeah, amazing. I'll have to have a look into both of those. I haven't heard of either of those.
I like Santana, I like Jimi Hendrix, I like, I listen to all kinds of stuff once in a while.
Have you heard any new rhythms in new music that you'd be interested in incorporating into your own music?
It's funny you should say that. I had a period in my life around 1973 to 75 where when I focused my mind on it, there'd be nonstop continuous rhythm patterns going through my head. Some of them were conventional rhythms. For example, rhythmically, the national anthem of Cuba is dum 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 like that. That's and for other places like Tahiti, the rhythm would be or Arab would be or Brazil might be so I'd be hearing music like that. However, about 60% of the rhythm patterns I was hearing in my mind were not native to any culture on earth. They were effective patterns, but no one was using those rhythm patterns. Rhythm is an energy pump through time, and if it's effective rhythm, it pumps a lot of energy. So I started writing down these rhythm patterns. I ended up with my rhythm library written out, each 4-beat pattern, sometimes 8-beat pattern, usually 4-beat pattern. And then to make it easier for me to refresh my memory on it, I record my voice singing each of those patterns. That'd be an example of one, So I have a recording of each of those patterns just to refresh my mind on it. And about 60% of them are rhythms that are not native to any particular planet on Earth. But they're very effective rhythms. And I used many of those when I did my rhythm album, Bora Bora 2000. Give me a chance to do many of those.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to have a listen to that.
Oh, so what I was going to say is, there's a point in my life around 1973 when I was hearing rhythms going through my head like a radio station, continuous rhythm patterns. And eventually I realized what was going on. There were 4 rhythm masters from the Maasai civilization that wanted to program my mind with these rhythms, and they just burned it into my skull to the point that right now I can be syncing rhythms and changing rhythm patterns continuously, and I could do it for 4 hours until my voice got hoarse from doing it. And I can just sing rhythms and changing the pattern all the time because these patterns are so programmed into me. It's like a bird doing bird calls.
Wow. Wow.
So I went down for about 3 years where I focused my mind on it. There'd be nonstop, like radio station rhythm patterns going through my head, many of which were unusual patterns, but very effective rhythm patterns. So I got myself thoroughly programmed with rhythm.
Yeah, totally. Do you like dance a lot to music nowadays or ever?
If I happen to be at some social event where they got a rhythm pattern that makes my body want to move, I like salsa music. Salsa rhythms or samba. Salsa or samba. Those kind of rhythms really make my body want to move. If it's a kind of rhythm that makes me want to move, I do. If it's something like rock music, to me, that's kind of like simple-minded rhythmically. It does make my body want to move, but it's kind of stuff that makes me want to move. I love dancing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, like, do you see like dance as like an art medium in that sense? Like, do you ever like dance
You can make an art medium out of anything.
Yeah. I agree.
You can make an art medium out of designing military tanks, you know. Anything can be an art form.
Yeah. And then I was gonna sort of, I think I've asked most of the questions that I was looking to ask you, honestly. I definitely don't want to miss anything out though. I was gonna
don't
ask,
miss anything. Take your time.
Certainly. I do. I know you're in Hawaii right now. I was gonna ask what your sort of daily life is like out there right now. Sort of day to day, like what do you tend to, is there like a ritual or routine that you do, or is it just change day to day?
Well, part of it is unique for each day, but part of it is repeatable, recurrent. The parts that are repeatable or recurrent are this. In the morning, I wash up, shave, brush my teeth, take a shower, and then I meditate. I do transcendental meditation. And then I do stuff on the internet, like check my emails, find interesting news sources that I personally respect.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do my errands, whatever that might be. Sometimes I go to the beach, you know, stuff like that. And in the evenings is when I work on music, because in the ancient mystery schools, they always did their studying at night, never during the daytime. And the reason for that is when the sun is out, the influence of the sun is to keep everybody grounded. But when the sun is not there at night, it's easy to mentally space out into the cosmos. And because of that, I do all my work on music in the evenings.
Right, I see. Do you can you make music every day, or are there some days where you can't make music? Or
well, I alternate between two modes, assimilation and creation. The simulation mode is where I'm studying new music software, or I'm scanning new sound libraries that I might want to use. And I'm learning, basically learning, okay? And I take detailed notes on what I'm learning. So later I say, gee, how did I do that? I can get back to it real quick because of my notes. And then when I feel ripe from all the new things I've learned, then I switch into creative mode. In creative mode, I record a piece of music. Right now, I'm just beginning a new piece, which I'm very excited about, because I've been in creative mode for about maybe 4 or 5 months. And now I'm switching over into creative mode from assimilation mode. And I'm really excited about the piece I'm starting to work on. Working on it last night is really exciting.
How long does it typically take to make a piece for you? Does it, or what's the range of time that it might take?
Well, each piece is different. Some pieces I did in one take, which may have taken 11 minutes. Other pieces, the most extreme example is Crystal White Firelight on my Elixir album. I think that piece is about 13 minutes, 15 seconds.
Right.
Took 3.5 years.
Wow.
That's the longest, okay? I had a lot of special effects there. Part of it, about in the middle of it, was a parade of special effects that Vista wanted me to get out there. And so I might have spent a week on just one effect that lasts 4 seconds, you know. And some of those effects I ended up not even using because they didn't work the way I was intending them to work. So that's the longest. And so anything within that range.
Yeah. Do you ever have like a creative block where you don't feel like you can make something? Or...
No, when I first came to California, I came with $500 of my food with the intention of creating a whole new kind of music. Because I was hearing paradise music in my mind then, although at that point in time, I did not know it was Vista that was transmitting it to me. I was just hearing music in my mind and wanted to manifest it. And I was getting ideas for a while, and then at a certain point I dried up. So then I prayed for creativity. And that prayer was answered so super over abundantly. That I needed to create and develop traffic control for all the ideas coming through. So great ideas come through, I start writing them down, but then other ideas come through, but I don't want to forget the new idea, but I don't want to forget the. So I developed traffic control on the ideas so that I wouldn't lose any of the important ideas coming through because they're coming through so fast. And now it's leveled out to where I have creativity on a tap. Like you want water, you open the tap, you get water. You don't need it anymore, you turn it off. When I'm in simulation mode, I turn off creativity because I'm just learning. When I finish learning, I want to create, I turn on creativity and it's there. It's just there. Incidentally, in my understanding, each person has a higher self, and all creativity comes from the higher self. And then your physical brain receives the mental transmissions from the higher self, and then your earth mind perceives that idea. Your earth mind didn't create it, your brain didn't create it, came from your higher self, and then your brain, which is an interdimensional antenna system, received that thought, and then when it received it, your mind here on earth perceived that idea, but it comes from the higher self. Anyway, imagination is the funnel, it's the tunnel through which your higher self communicates to you. And so your higher self is in a continuous state of creativity. It's this, when you say you have a creative block, that means you're not listening to your higher self, because the higher self is always nonstop creative. It's like a waterfall of ideas going off continuously, a waterfall of ideas nonstop. God is like that, even more so. The higher up levels you go, the bigger the flow, the river of ideas is, but it's like that all the way up to infinity. And so since that time when I prayed for creativity and I got it, since then I've never had a creative block, and now it's on tap. When I want to turn the faucet, it's there. Stop enough, I turn it off so I can manifest the creativity I got. Because if you got an idea in the middle of manifesting an idea, it's not a good time to get new ideas because it interferes with manifesting the idea you're manifesting. When you manifested it, then you can turn it off. Incidentally, Vista gave me a great technique for manifesting any complex project. And this technique applies to any project in any field, whether it's an architect building a building or organizing an event at an amphitheater, any kind of big event, or having a huge party or a wedding. It applies for any of these. And here's the technique. You use your mind like a telephoto lens. With a telephoto lens, you can zoom in and see something with great detail. You're just seeing a little bit, but you're seeing a great detail, or you can zoom back and get the big picture. So you use your mind as a telephoto lens. And first you zoom back all the way and you see the overall project, you see what needs to be done, and then you make a list of what needs to be done, and then you sort them in the priority order. First, this needs to be done. Second, this needs to be done. Third, so you list them in the order in which it needs to be done most effectively. When you do that, then you go to the first thing on the list and then you zoom in on it. And then you focus just on that first thing. So at that point, your mind isn't scattered on all the 8 steps that need to be done. Focus only on step number 1. And you're seeing in great detail, and you focus all your mental energy only on manifesting step number 1. And when it's fully manifested, because all your energy is concentrated on it, then you zoom back and you get the big view and you go back to your sequence of events, manifestation sequence. They say, okay, the first step is done. Now it's time for the second step. Then you zoom in on step number 2. And you see what needs to be done. You do all your mental energy isn't scattered all over the place in all the different steps. It's focused only on step number 2. When you manifest it, then you zoom back. Then you go to number 3, and you repeat this process till the whole thing is done. It's a very efficient way to manifest it. And Vista taught me how to use my mind as a telephoto lens like that.
That's brilliant. I think that's good advice for anyone, honestly.
Yeah, for any project, for anything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because a lot of what people do is when they focus on one part of it, they still think about all the other things that need to be done. That's not efficient. Once you get the sequence of events that's ideal or optimum, then you focus only on the next step that needs to be done.
Definitely. You were saying earlier about how you were told that you have like an immense sense of concentration, and I suppose you have like a lot of focus as well with that.
Well, the 2 words mean the same thing.
Yeah,
focus and concentration mean the same thing.
For sure. And like I'd say like a lot of your music, for me personally, like has a lot of focus in it. Like you talk about like the meditative kind of aspect of the music and new age music and heavenly celestial music. That I think it brings a lot of focus, doesn't it? And there is a lot of your music. I don't know, there's something about like elongated synths that really like pull you in. They really like immerse you, I feel, and they allow you to hear like you're saying your higher self. I really
Well,
feel.
some of the sounds are ambient, like you said, long sustains. And those sounds tend to relax a person
Mhm.
and put them in a meditative state. Other things I do, highly energizing, highly invigorating, highly stimulating, and they have totally different effects. A lot of intricate activity, and they're both useful for different purposes.
But I was going to ask, and I know you tend to stay on like well, in fact, I think you've said in another interview, you always stay on like a positive kind of side, like of music. Like, have you ever, do you feel like your music has ever like got any elements of darkness to contrast with light?
I would never do that.
Never.
Earth is so filled with music, with dark emotions, dark intentions. It doesn't need any more. I don't want to pollute an already polluted ocean.
Mm-hmm.
I want to purify it as much as it can. I would never, ever create any music that had, in my sensing, negative feelings. I would never do that. That totally goes against the whole reason why I'm here on Earth. I'm here on Earth to manifest uplifting music, period. If it's not uplifting, I ain't going to manifest it.
Yeah, I'm with. I like that.
As a matter of fact, people told me you should do music for movies. I'm hesitant to that because when you do music for movies, sometimes they want sound that is exciting and uplifting. That's fine. Sometimes they want music that's terrifying, which I would never do. Sometimes they want music that's sad and depressing, which I would never do. So I'm not available like a prostitute for any whatever they want. I would only do music uplifting only. So they're not going to want a musician that does that.
I've often considered like the idea of like a feature film that is purely positive, or like the plot line.
Sign me up. Sign me up. I'm all for that. I don't have a problem with that.
A lot of plot line. In fact, it's pretty much in like the inherent structure of like a film plot to have some kind of an internal conflict, and inherently that
there's formulas that they use for filmmaking to have what they call an effective movie.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that you need to have conflict in order to have excitement. That's not true. There are a lot of civilizations that have no conflict, but they have a lot of excitement. A lot of people think you need to have suffering in order to have goodness. You don't. There are a lot of civilizations that don't have any suffering at all, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
Some people think you need to have struggle in order to evolve. No, you need to have challenges, but you don't need to have negativity or struggle. You just need challenges.
So if someone were to offer you like a placement of one of your pieces in a film, where there is, I don't know, a conflict in that film, would you consider letting them use your piece like at a specific like high point of the film?
Yeah, if they want to use my music at a positive point, I'm open for that.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I hope that happens today. I really do. And yeah, I think I'm coming to the end of my questions here. I was going to ask. I know you've just mentioned that you've got a new piece that you're working on right now.
I just started a few days ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I was going to ask, like, do you have any sort of shows or like talks planned, or like, or the idea of that happening like in the future, in the near future?
When all the COVID restrictions are lifted, I expect to be doing shows different places, but not while COVID restrictions are happening.
Mm-hmm. Got you. And yeah, I mean, the sort of final question I was going to ask here is our network is called Soul Space, and so what that is to me is a space that you feel like you're comfortable in, effectively, or you can be free in.
Nice.
So I was going to ask, where is your soul space, would you say?
Where's my soul space music?
Where is like a place where you feel like you're like most comfortable, like on Earth?
Oh, most comfortable on Earth. I have two places on Earth. One is the soul space for my higher self-consciousness, and the other is the soul space for my body.
Mm-hmm.
The soul space for my higher consciousness is Delphi, Greece,
Mm-hmm.
which, besides being visually stunning,
Yeah.
it also is one of the power spots on the planet. like Machu Picchu or Stonehenge or Mount Shasta. And when I go there, I feel incredible. It's as if the lid on my crown chakra is removed and I have access to the cosmos. That's what it feels like to me when I'm there. So for my higher mind, my soul space is Delphi, Greece. And for my body, my soul space is one of the Tahitian islands, Bora Bora. To me, that's the most beautiful spot on earth. And when I die, I want to be in Bora Bora, relaxing on a reclining chair, looking at the lagoon. Then just drift off. That's my idea of the most wonderful way to depart from this dimension.
Amazing.
Those are my two soul spaces, as you define soul space.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, I think that's everything I had to ask there.
Now check carefully, take your time, no
I
rush.
will.
Go over it slowly, take your time, make sure you got it all.
I was just going to wrap it up by sort of reiterating what you said before, that, you know, all your, well, a lot more information about what you've talked about today is at iasos.com, and all your music is on Bandcamp, right? Is that correct?
Well, yeah, my website is iasos.com. That's iasos.com. And people can listen to the full version of any music from any of my songs from any album for free, as often as they like, at iasos.bandcamp.com. iasos.bandcamp, one word, .com.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you, Iasos.